Just a sign really of the emotions that have been stirred this week by this attack. There was a lot of commentary on why it took so long for the authorities to get a suspect, given the amount of footage that was available, the fact that there is so much sort of surveillance cameras out there in the US, the fact that there is so much sort of surveillance cameras out there in the US. There seemed to be a very sort of organised attack, and that the suspect was able to make a getaway.
Oh, that's a good question.
Thank you, Governor. This is what happens when you let good cops be cops. In 33 hours, we have made historic progress for Charlie Kirk in honor of his memory.
As we near the 48-hour mark since the shooting of Charlie Kirk. But that's what Donald Trump had to say. And importantly, the person who recognized the suspect was a person of faith, a minister. Then he also goes on to say the father convinced the son.
You know, if we look at this alleged shooter, a 22-year-old, we look at the shooter of the healthcare CEO, again, another young person in his 20s, and of course, the shooter in the attempted assassination of President Donald Trump back in 2024. These were all very young people, and I think that is a riddle that is going to vex the nation and, of course, our leaders for quite some time.
Yeah, and it was described during that news conference as a political assassination. We heard about those inscriptions on bullet casings, etc. But up until this point, obviously, and to a certain degree, we're still in the realms of speculation unless and until a suspect actually says, well, this is why I did it.
I think there's some information that this individual had a father who was a police officer, so obviously that might have played into this, turning yourself in.
What will they be doing to try to get inside his head, to understand his motivations, if indeed he is saying that he is the person who has done this?
Right. Like you said, the inscription on the bullet, and we've seen a lot of that in a number of shootings, not just here in the U.S., but the Christchurch shooter in New Zealand at the mosque, he had written all over his weapon. So that to me is an indication, that they want to speak.
Scenes of panic and terror. And let's hear now from some eyewitnesses who were at that event held by Charlie Kirk at Utah Valley University. They explain what they saw.
I was watching from pretty close up, and I heard a pop, and I thought, no, that nobody's shooting firecrackers, right? The first student got up and they were talking about religion, Mormonism, and Christianity, and the second student to get up was talking about transgenderism and how gun violence has been very frequent with that community, and that is when it happened. Pretty ironic.
But at that point, I understood that this was a targeted political assassination.
They didn't even check for my ticket, which I did get a ticket. They did not pat us down. I feel like I maybe saw 3 or 4 police officers in this whole environment of hundreds of people, I would guess, which I thought was a little odd.